the Gemara that we had learned. We spoke about the Shmoina Nesicha Yadam Shiva, the Shiva Royim Shmoina Nesicha Yadam. Again, there's definitely more to it. I did not find much written about it, but it does sound very interesting. Rashi himself says doesn't really know exactly what these, why these are special. What's so special about these individuals more than others? There were other great tzaddikim, but there's somehow they're going to help us lasted lavai when the time comes, based on this nevuah and micha. There's a prophecy in micha about Ashur is going to might if they come to fight us. These leaders are going to like help us out, and they're going to stand up and fight for us. So the question is who they, what
Baruch
exactly
Hashem, the more the merrier.
we're gonna have. Yeah, we're gonna have some tzaddikim fighting for us. Radam Sheis Mesushelach Avram Yaakov Moshe, and then the Shmoina Nesicha Yadam was Yishai Shol Shmuel Amai Tzfanya Tzidkiya Mashiach and Eliyahu. Many of them are let's see, Nevi'im. So, yeah. I don't know if we consider Yishai a Navi, but or Shaul, maybe Shaul. At some point, Shaul did have Nevuah. I think that's what we learned, right? Now, the Gemara mentioned about the four ladders, and the menorah, the height was 50 amos high, and the koyanim, we mentioned that the young koyanim would go and carry up the 120 lugs of oil, and the question was it each youth carried 120 lugs? A lug would be like 4 kiddush cups, because our revius means a quarter of a lug. That's generally the size of a kiddush cup. I mean, of course, there's different opinions how big a revius halug is, but so I'm just giving you like an estimate of how big a lug is. The revius halug is somewhere between 3 and 4 ounces, or at least 3 and 5 ounces. So definitely, so a lug itself is 4 times that. So it's like 12 ounces to 60, somewhere between 12 and 16 or so ounces, and then 120 of those lugs. So the Gemara was wondering what it means. Is it 120 lugs each of the youth carried, or is it only altogether? Each menorah had 120 lugs, but there were 4 people filling up each of the bowls of the menorah on top. So ultimately, it was only 30, not 100. Each young kohen carried 30 lugs. Either way, whatever, it's still a nice amount. And the Gemara says, yeah, this was quite that's what it was. It was only each one carried 30 lugs. It wasn't 120, 30, but still, it was quite impressive. Meshubachin hayu, they were praiseworthy for doing this, even more than the son of Martha bas Baitus. Martha bas Baitus was an interesting situation. Basically, Martha was a widow, and she married Yehoshua ben Gamla. He did kedushin to her. He was a kohen. Now, kohen's not allowed to marry a divorcee, but she was a widow. But then she was so wealthy, she paid the Roman emperor money to make him kohen gadol. But a kohen gadol is not allowed to marry, and they had only done kiddushin. They did kiddushin. There was the first part of marriage was done before, but then she gave him a gift. She brought him this honor of becoming kohen gadol, and now he's a kohen gadol. But the question is this okay? Can he be kohen gadol and at the same time be married to a widow? because officially a Kohen Gadol can't marry a widow. But they got married before they got married before he became Kohen Gadol, at least the first half of the marriage, the Kedushin part. Anyway, conclusion was that it was okay. But the Gemara brings that as a proof. Anyway, so this is so that's the story of Yehoshua ben Gamla. There's really a question in the Gemara. There's really a question about the Gemaras because there's other stories about Yehoshua ben Gamla as well. Yehoshua ben Gamla was considered a great man who brought about a great change in education, and that's why there are schools. They call them the Ben Gamla schools. So Ben Gamla was, encouraging education from a young age and so on, and so he was considered a tzaddik. So there's a question now. There are two Yehoshua ben Gamlas. This Yehoshua ben Gamla who paid to become Kohen Gadol, his wife paid that he should become Kohen Gadol. Is that the same one, or is this a different Yehoshua ben Gamla? Anyway, so the commentaries talk about that. Isaac, you seem to want to say something. We can't hear you. You gotta.
I can't imagine that I'm sorry, it's the washing machine is going behind me, so I don't leave it on. No, I don't believe that it could be the same person. It doesn't sound consistent with building yeshivas and becoming Kohen Gadol with a bribe. That's all.
Right. Now the question is was it wrong? I mean, it could be that the other Kohanim Gedolim were unworthy, and this one, the wife was capable of paying them off to give us a worthy Kohen Gadol. I mean, you could maybe explain it.
If he feels capable to take on the risk of being a Kohen Gadol, especially with the history of Kohanim, Gedolim,
right,
one a year. So that's something you have to really want to do that.
Anyway, the good thing about Yehoshua ben Gamla was that a person who didn't have used to be that someone whose parents they had parents, so they would the parents would teach them Torah, but the person who didn't have parents, and it was very common with the first of all sickness and all the different types of blood libels and murder and other things that they would do, anti-Semitism.
Life expectancies were not very long.
Right, but then you also
couldn't rely on it. I'm saying he couldn't rely on it. Or somebody had an ignoramus for a father who couldn't teach him.
Right. And also all the tsaras we had from the Goyim. They would take Yidden, put them in prison, and take Yidden and ransom them, and take Yidden and kill them. So anyway,
take children and put them in the Tsar's army for 25 years.
Right. So anyway, so Yehoshua ben Gamla came around. He said, we got to make yeshivas. He was really the origin of having schools that everyone should be eligible to learn Torah. So he made that every Medina and every city, every country, every city has to have a yeshiva for 6 and 7 year olds. That was his establishment. And the Gemara uses a term that he's remembered, Zachar Oisaya Ishla Toiv, and if not for Yehoshua ben Gamla, the Torah would have been forgotten amongst Klal Yisrael. Great things about Yehoshua ben Gamla. Anyway, so that's the other story about Yehoshua ben Gamla. But anyway, here we're dealing with someone by the name of Marta Bas Baitus. So she married Yehoshua ben Gamla, which might be a different Yehoshua ben Gamla again, and she had a son from the previous marriage, and he was a very strong person. And he was able to carry the 2 yerechos of a shar, the 2 thighs of a ox, of a bull, that was huge. And he would be able to carry that up to the Mizbeach. And they didn't let him, but he was capable of doing it. And they would stop him, and they'd make sure to give it to two koyanim instead of one, but he was capable of carrying both thighs, even of an ox that was sold for 1,000 zuz, meaning even if it was a big one, he was capable of carrying both thighs up to the mizbeach. And now, when you carry a very heavy load, a lot of times you rush to get there, and then you just drop it off. You run up to get to where you need to, and goodbye. He would go slow. He would be mahalech okev b'tzad gudel. Okev b'tzad gudel means he would walk slowly up to be able to bring it there without no rush. He didn't have to rush there and drop it and then go He would walk there and he would get there and he would put it down. And the thing is, but they didn't let him because Beroivam Hadras Melech, because you're supposed to do things with a lot of people, and this was something that they would honor the koyanim. Each one would carry one part of a bull. You had 24 different parts that of the animal that they would honor each one with a kohen. Anyway, so the young koyanim that would carry the oil up was even more praiseworthy than this guy who could do the two thighs of a bull. So the Gemara says, why were these young koyanim more praiseworthy than that guy who was carrying a head? This is not that much. 30 lugs of oil. It's not so impressive. I mean, more than this guy, the son of Marta Bas Baitus. So the Gemara says, yeah, but there's a difference. When you carry something straight up a ladder, that's different than carrying something up a ramp. And he would carry it. The son of Marta Bas Baitus, he would carry it up a ramp that was called Meruba Veloy Zokif. It was a certain statistic of its slope. It's called Meruba. Meruba means like a fourth or 1 out of 4, which means for every 4 cubits that it would go horizontally, it would go 1 vertical. 1 cubit vertical by 4 horizontal, approximately. Again, it doesn't mean it exact, because the mizbeach was 9 cubits and the ramp was 32 cubits. So if it was 36 cubits, then it would be exact. Every 4 cubits would be 1 cubit up. Now, the young Kayanim, what did they do? They went straight up on a ladder. They were walking straight up. So for them, this was this was more praiseworthy. We consider it more praiseworthy what they did than what he did, because he was going on a slope while they were going straight up. And his slope, it says, was Meruba, was like one for every 4, one up for every 4 across. Every 4 cubits across. And they had a sulamais that was zakif tuva, very, very steep. Okay, then so that was the end of 52b. And then it mentioned that there wasn't a chotzer in Yerushalayim. Actually, before I continue, I should mention that there is a discussion in the commentaries about the fact that he walked slowly. Okev b'tzad gudel. We know that the mizbeach specifically had a ramp because you're not allowed to have steps. It's not honorable to the mizbeach to have steps. So the commentaries discuss this story here. That he went okev b'tzad gudel. Now, I keep using that word. I should translate it. Okev means the heel. The heel of one foot was next to the gudel, the thumb toe of the other foot, which means he walked without spreading out his legs. And so the commentaries discuss, is that something that's a necessity, or is that just something he did because he walked slow? Possibly that's that's part of bringing, when you go up the altar, possibly that's part of not walking on steps, is also not spreading your legs too far apart. So that is a discussion in the commentaries about the Okev B'tzad Gudel. Was that a law? Was that just it was something that that he did, or was it something that was encouraged? So something that the commentaries discuss. Um,
And we're talking about just the keves, just the ramp,
the ramp, yeah, yeah, the
not
ramp.
walking around the mizbeach. People
Right.
were
So
not
that's
walking tippy toe like that.
So one opinion, what you're saying is a good point, Isaac. That there is an opinion that says there's a difference. On the Mizbeach, everyone's obligated to walk slowly without spreading out their legs. But on the ramp, this is where he did it as a means of, strength, but it wasn't an obligation. Um, and who says that? That's based on the Chidusha Yavitz, and maybe others. Yeah, that you really could take big steps on the ramp. It's only on the Mizbeach. That's one opinion. Um, that's an understanding that they have. Could be that it's some different discussions about it in the commentaries. Is it? You know, um, it does mention that that they would the Koyanim would run. Um, where does it mention it? Um, Bisman shehein merubin rotzin v'oilin bekevesh. There's a Mishnah in Yuma that mentions that seems that they used to run. Um, the Koyanim would run up the altar, so the ramp. So based on that, there's room to say it must be that it's allowed to just do a regular run, because it does mention that the Koyanim, when you had a lot of when when there was a lot of Koyanim, they would run up the. It sounds like you're allowed to run up the ramp. So the discussion is, first of all, does that mean that they would run by spreading their legs apart? Or would they run, meaning like walk very fast, but without spreading their legs apart? That could be one way of understanding it. Or b'shas the avoida, they have to. This is like a preparation for the avoida. This is this maybe is only a only at the time of the actual avoida, when they did this actual service. Um, they weren't allowed to. Anyway, so that's a little discussion here based on these this thing. Okay, B'tzad Gudel. Now, there's another discussion about the fact that the bull they used 24 koyanim for, but we do find that uh, not all for the bull, but for the bull together with the meal offering and the wine and the oil, So it ultimately it ended up to be 24. Um, so the question is, what about a keves, lamb? a lamb was much less. So you sort of see that you didn't really need to have 24 koyanim, because you see by a lamb, they would divide it much less with fewer koyanim. It says a keves was, which is a lamb, was brought with 9 koyanim. A par was esrim v'arba. But if that's in it, it was based on the
What was
fact
that?
that it's
That was a
heavy.
bull?
A bull, based
A
on the
bull.
fact that it's heavier. But the thing is, if someone could handle it, if it's all about being heavy, so someone is strong enough. If a sheep could do, you could do 9. Do the same with a bull, right? That's what it would seem like. Why is our
I
Gemara
don't know
say
why. For the
that?
shmita, for everything?
For
You have
Roibam
to hold.
Hadras Melech. No, to carry it
Oh,
out to
you,
the altar. So, like our Gemara says, Roibam Hadras Melech, you got to use as many people as you can. Sounds like, but we don't say that with the sheep. So the way it seems to work is that it goes by what's the norm. How many would be the norm that you would need to carry it? And if that's what the norm is, you don't change from it. So in other words, a bull normally would need 24. We keep it that way. You really, we're not going to make more people carry if you don't need 2 people to carry something. So we take what's the norm measure amount that a normal that regular people would be able to handle, and that's how it's divided up. It's almost like based on the laws of Shabbos. 2 people that do something that could be done by 1 is not really called doing it. So therefore, it's based on what the norm is for one person to carry. That's what he should carry. And we're not going to divide it into 2 if it's normally done with 1 kohen. But here, basically, the bull is normally divided by 24 kohenim carrying it up onto the altar. So that's what you would do, is you would divide it up by 24. So it gives us a little understanding of the some of the side issues here that come up with these stories. Okay, now came the next Gemara about the women checking out the wheat. They would be boirer the chitim, sorting the wheat. And yesterday, Jeffrey, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
I'm very interested in the stories about the Kohanim. So, number 1, okay. If her son, by the first marriage, this famous woman's son, was carrying meat on the altar, means he was a Kohen also. That means her first husband was a Kohen also. So I mean, that's the only way it could be.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
Right. So it's more complicated, the whole relationships, because there were towns that were all Kohanim. So if you knew one, like you knew the whole society of Kohanim, right? It tells us, like with Yirmiyahu, he's from this town on Athod, right? And they're all Kohanim there.
Right.
So the qualifications and all this may have to do with the social relationship.
Right.
So they may have to do with who qualified, may have to do with the social relationships, not only the genetic relationships. So that she would pick another husband, and that she would pick somebody who was qualified, that she could be the Kohen Gadol. I mean, it's like it's a certain part of society. It's not just happens to be a Kohen.
Yeah, I mean, there is a concept that if someone marries a bas kohen, it's along what you're saying, but it's not applicable, of course, to this story. But if like my brother married the daughter of a kohen, and the law is that you're only, and Isaac also married the daughter of a kohen. And the law is you're only supposed to marry the daughter of a kohen if you're a Talmud Chacham. You're supposed to have like some level of special connection, special holiness to you, in order to marry the daughter of a kohen.
A Talmud Chacham is not holiness.
Well,
is somebody who's learned. I understand, but I'm just saying.
So
But
the minhag
my father-in-law made sure of that.
make sure of the learnedness, or that, yeah. You're saying that you don't want to claim to be holy, but you claim to. All right, but the thing is that the custom is that you learn a tractate of Talmud, which we've learned a number of them already. But as long as you learn one tractate of Talmud, you're considered a Talmud Chacham, at least for that tractate, and that's good enough to marry a Kayin, the daughter of a Kayin. So it's customary to do that, and you learn a tractate before you get married. So I assume my brother did that. But anyway, but so that goes along with what you're saying, that it's like a uh, uh, certain rules or traditions about marrying into such a holy family, that you should also have something that in order for the marriage to go well, it should be of a similar holiness, or specialness. Okay. Anyway,
And the other thing is that all the bulls are not gigantic. They could be young bulls and they could be small, but
right.
but depending on which sacrifice it is, you have to separate certain of the parts of the bull to be burned on the altar or burned outside. There's different characteristics according to the kind of sacrifice it is. So that might explain also why you have so many people doing it.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah, that I'm not sure if there was a difference. That we'd have to look up. But here, interestingly enough, it mentions that it was a shar that was worth 1,000 zuz. So it gives you an understanding of how big this shar was. That this son, this son of Marta Bas Baitus would carry. It was even he would carry this huge 2 thighs, which were from a huge bull.
At once, right? At once, presumably. But if you have a chatos, a bull for a chatos, it has different rules about what gets burned and which pieces are separated than if it's an ola.
Right. True. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess it has to be that way, right?
I don't think you had a bull for a chatos. It was always sa'ir la chatos. It was a goat for a chatos. The time you had parim, the only time you had in communal offerings, usually you had a small sheep in the morning, a baby sheep at night. If it was yontiv,
no, we're talking about it has to be talking about Jeffrey has a good point. It has to be talking about an oila, a burnt. Well, both of you have a good point. We have to be talking about a carbon oila, because that's where you have 24 people bringing up everything is burned. So that's where you would have this, by a carbon oila, because otherwise you're right. Some of the most of it was not burned on the altar. Only the emurim were burnt on the altar, right? So it has to be talking about an oila. Yeah. Good. Okay.
But I'm saying the only time you had parim is like yontif. You had 8, 7, 6, 5, 4,
right,
going down. But
13,
right.
Yeah, parei hachag. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Getting back to the next piece of Gemara. So the next piece of Gemara was talking about the fact that they would sort out the chitim. A woman, it was so light from these menorahs, from these, that they were able to sort out chitim in the light of the Beis HaShoed from that light. And the discussion here, and that we mentioned yesterday, was with Tosfos over here brings down from the Yerushalmi that it sounds like women would do this. They would check, they would be boirer, they would be sorting out the wheat. And are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to benefit from the from this light of the Beis Hamikdash, which was burning from holy oil and holy wick? The wick was from the clothing of the kohen, and so this was questioned. It was the shemen and psila of hegdish. So there's a concept that you're not supposed to benefit from hegdish, from benefiting from the items that were owned by the Beis Hamikdash. So was this a problem? So the Yerushalmi says that it's not a problem, because you're not physically benefiting from the actual item. You're benefiting from the smell, from the light, from the view, the mara, the coil, the sound of it. These are not actual taking something from the essence of the actual item of the Beis Hamikdash. This is more just what's being given off. So that's not a problem. The only thing that Tosfos says is that doesn't really work perfectly, because that just means that there's no prohibition of me'ilah, and you don't get the punishment of me'ilah, but there's still a prohibition of benefiting. So, you think you have the answer, and Yerushalmi says this answer, but Tosfos says, but it doesn't really fit, because that's true, there's no me'ilah, but that doesn't really answer the question completely, because there's still a prohibition. And seemingly what Tosfos means is there might be a rabbinic prohibition of benefiting from it. Although Tosfos doesn't say clearly, is this a rabbinic prohibition or is it a biblical prohibition? But there is clearly another prohibition, and it's brought in the Gemara Pesachim, that there is still an isser, even though there's no me'ilah, there's still an isser here. And again, the commentaries discuss this Tosfos and talk about what are we referring to? Is it a biblical isser or a rabbinic isser? But there's still a prohibition. And so how did the women do this? So Tosfos says, no, they didn't actually do it. They could do it. It was so light that they were capable of sorting out this. Not that they would do it, because they weren't supposed to. And the question is, what about the Yerushalmi? The Yerushalmi says this was not a problem, because you don't have me'ilah. But how does that help it? Does the Yerushalmi hold that it's no isser either? Maybe it's an argument between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. Is there, if you don't have me'ilah, but is there still a rabbinic prohibition or not? So some want to say that this is actually an argument between Bavli and Yerushalmi. You could learn it that way. But there are other ways of explaining that the Yerushalmi is also talking about that it would only be a rabbinic law and it wouldn't apply because it's only a concern that they might. There's a way of understanding it based on Yerushalmi that you could explain. That's not a contradiction, but it could be that it's an argument between Bavli and Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. If you would be allowed to benefit from the koil, mare, and reach. These are not items that you're actually taking from the Beis Hamikdash, but it's sort of like the external shine from the items of the Beis Hamikdash, the external some type of a smell that's coming from the Beis Hamikdash.
The direct effect.
Indirect.
Direct
or indirect?
Direct effect of the. You can't do it without that.
It's an effect of it, but it's not the actual item. Shkoyach, Jeffrey.
So, if you hear the music from the Beis Hamikdash, you also can't dance. So,
right. So that would be the question, right?
So you have to realize we're talking about the Simchas Beis HaShoevah. It's not the avoda. They didn't have these lamps for the daytime. These are the lamps for the nighttime, for the drawing of the water and for the dancing, for the simcha.
Right.
So it seems to me it's very different. It's not for the avoda, and so the light is used for the simcha to make it possible for people not to get hurt or whatever, and to enjoy the holiday. So it seems to me that it's perfectly permissible to use the light in any way you want.
So the point is that it's still called hegdish. It's just not, you're not actually taking from the carbon, but it's still hegdish of bedek habayis. It's not an actual sacrifice, but it's still owned by the Beis Hamikdash. And would that be allowed to benefit from that type of from those type of things? I mean, I don't know if that answers the problem. Again, I guess we would have to learn Me'ilah a little better to get into the details of what is permitted and what isn't. But
I think it's hard to imagine that all this oil was only from the storage of the Beis Hamikdash. That they would have used for sacrifices if they didn't use it for this. It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it was a separate oil, especially for the occasion, only during Sukkot. They obtained it a different way.
It is brought down. There is an opinion that says that the rabbis prohibited you to benefit normally from items that were, even though there's not real me'ilah here, because again, it's not the actual, you're not benefiting from the actual item, but you're benefiting from the effect. So there's normally a rabbinic decree, but nevertheless, here there's room to say, like that the Yerushalmi holds, that the rabbis did not uphold their rabbinic decree in this case, because since they permitted using the oil for the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, which was not a real carbon, it's only Simcha, so therefore they were lenient and allowed even regular people to benefit from it. But really, in essence, normally this would be a problem. And there's another understanding here that that and this touches on something that I mentioned yesterday, that I was saying, like, what exactly were they looking for in the wheat? They're checking the wheat, sorting it from what what exactly? I mean, okay, I guess maybe from pebbles or things. I don't know. I mean, I would think they maybe sifted it before, so I don't know. What exactly are women? Yeah, maybe, what are they sorting? But one of the what?
Bugs, other things that could be
so
in
one
wheat?
of the understandings is that they're sifting the wheat for carbon minchas, for the bugs, because they were checking it for bugs, that it should, even though no one's eating, even though it's a carbon mincha, that at least some of it is being burnt, maybe all of it is being burnt on the altar. It depends on which type of mincha it is, minchas kayin or minchas yisrael. But they had to be, it would be puzzle if it had toilaim, if it had any worms or bugs in it, and so they're using it l'tzarech mitzvah. So because of that, that's why it was permissible for them to use the light, and that would be the reason why it's a tzarech mitzvah, and it's not it would not be a problem of benefiting from hegdish, because they're using it for hegdish, for minchas. This would be an alternative answer to, I guess, Taisus's question, that how is it allowed, and wouldn't it be me'ilah? And the answer is that it's they're using it for a carbon. They're using it for a carbon mincha. Seemingly, that would be an understanding here. Anyway, so bottom line is that I don't know if you can say that it's because it's just because it's not an actual carbon, if that helps. You know what I mean? But because of these other reasons, that's why it would be permissible.
This isn't a typical evening activity.
I will say this. We said that the effects of these items are normally not, they don't fall in the category of me'ilah, but they might fall in the category of having a prohibition. And that would be possibly an argument between Bavli and Yerushalmi. The only thing is, there is clearly a rule that you can't use a fire of hegdish. And if you take a flame of hegdish and you take a fire from it, that's a problem. That would be a prohibition. Now, why would that be different than other effects? Why would the flame be different? So commentaries mention that when you're lighting from the flame of hegdish, that's not just an effect. That's the actual hegdish. If you just take the light of the flame, that would be a effect of it. But if you're actually taking the flame, that would be a problem. If you're taking the flame, that would be a problem of me'ilah. Anyway, that's a discussion. Okay, so these are some of the discussions here in the commentaries. Now, the Gemara continued and mentioned about the Chassidim and Anshe Meiser. Yesterday we learned I explained a little insight into this. The Gemara brings a brisa that says that the tzaddikim would say, we never sinned. Praiseworthy is our youth that didn't embarrass our older years. That means we didn't sin. And those that that was the Chasidim Anshe Maisa, which basically means like tzaddikim. They didn't sin. Then you had people who were called the Baalei Tshuva. The Baalei Tshuva, they would be the ones who said, praiseworthy is our older years, that it atoned for our younger, our Ziknusenu, our older years, that we were able to atone for our return, do tshuva, fix up what we did when we were younger. Praiseworthy is, and they would say that. And then both Elu v'Elu Oimrim, that both of them would say praiseworthy is someone who doesn't sin, and if a person sins, he should make sure to do tshuva. So I mentioned that you see from this Gemara, this concept that we've seen other, seems like you hear about it. Why is Sukkot right next to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Because it does still have, and we know Hoshana Rabbah is all about this. It seems that there's a concept of tshuva that's somewhere in the woodwork of the of Sukkot, somewhere in it's somewhere there in it, the concept of tshuva. You have Hoshana Rabbah, we know is like a Yom Kippur, and so you have this concept of tshuva during Sukkot. They would be singing with the water drawing ceremony. They would include some concept of how that about their tshuva, and that there's potential to do tshuva. We should make sure to do tshuva. It's still a time of being judged. You see it seems to be hinted over here. But I do want to mention that, of course, the simple understanding, sometimes you get into the little insights, you forget what's the simple understanding here. The simple understanding here is that the people who were dancing, they would be praising Hashem. What was their praise of Hashem? Their praise to Hashem was, thank you, Hashem, that we didn't sin when we were younger. They're doing shirais v'sishbachis. That's what the Mishnah had said, that they're dancing and they're saying before them shirais v'sishbachis, praises. That's what they're singing. They're songs and praises. What's the songs and praises? So the songs and praises is something that's very connected to this previous Gemara here. What did the previous Gemara say? It said that if not for Hashem helping us, we never would win over our evil inclination. So this is really a continuation of that idea that the Hasidim and Anshe Maisa would say, thank you, Hashem, for helping us out, that we didn't sin when we were younger. Ashrei Yaldusenu, Shaloi Bisha Ziknosenu means praiseworthy is Hashem, that our younger years, it's of course they're saying it about themselves, that our younger years didn't embarrass our older years, but it's basically a praise to Hashem that he helped us win over our evil inclination. And then the ones that sinned would say, thank you, Hashem, for allowing us to do tshuva. And then they would both say, praiseworthy is he that didn't sin, and if a person sins, he should make sure to do tshuva now. But they would tell the rest of the people, don't make sure not to sin. So that's what it seems like. The shirais v'sishbachos, at least on a simple level, is they're thanking Hashem for their for our fortune, that we could do tshuva and that Hashem helps us. Now, then the Gemara talked about some interesting statements, like Hillel Hazaken, that he used to say. Seems a little strange, the statement that he said, as a way of like encouraging people not to sin. He said, if I am here, everyone's here. And if I'm not here, then who's here? No one's here. And this, of course, has a few meanings. It's a poetic term, poetic words. One understanding is that if I am here, he's using himself, but he means Hashem, as if Hashem is saying this. That Hashem is saying that, I think that's the way Rashi, just pull up Rashi over here. Ivanikan, yeah. So Rashi says this. He was telling people not to sin, and he was saying as if Hashem is saying it, like in Hashem's name. If I am here, everyone's here. Meaning that if my Shechina is in the Beis Hamikdash, everyone will come here. But if you people sin, my Shechina won't be here. If I'm not here, who's coming? No one's coming. So everyone comes here because of the Shechina. Make sure not to sin. So that would be like a, it would be an almost like a continuation, really, of the previous statement about the people dancing would encourage the other people. Make sure not to sin. People shouldn't sin. So Hillel would say another type of term like Hashem's only here. The Shechina is only here is because we don't sin. Make sure not to sin because the Shechina, the whole reason we're here. If Hashem's here, then we're here. If Hashem isn't here, then what's this? What are we going to have? We're not going to. The Beis Hamikdash is there's no Shechina. It's not going to mean much. We're not going to come here. And then the other understanding is, and this is Tosfos's understanding, is Tosfos brings a Yerushalmi that that Hillel was saying this for Klal Yisrael, and it's, in other words, not Hashem saying it, but almost like the Jewish people, that if he said, if I am here, meaning if Klal Yisrael is here, then Hakol Kan, everyone is here. What does this mean? That Hashem imani kan hakol kan, im eini kan mikan. If I am here, meaning if Klal Yisrael is here and praising Hashem, then everyone is here. Just make sure, am I saying it right? If the Yidden come here to praise Hashem, then Hakol Kan, then everyone's here, meaning then the Shechina is here. But if the Yidden don't come here to praise Hashem, then who's here? The Shechina is not getting its praise. And what that means is, who, in other words, Mikan, who's going to come here to give praise to Hashem? If we come here and praise Hashem, then Hakol Kan. I don't know exactly how to translate Hakol Kan. Everyone's here, or it means all the praise. Everything that Hashem wants is here. Maybe that's how you translate it. Everything that Hashem wants is here. Hakol Kan. It's all here. It's all here. We got it all. And interestingly enough, what's the source of this? What are the psukim for this? So it's like a play on the words, which is it reminds me of a story of the Baal Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov had seen someone who used to just learn Torah, never, wasn't really involved in speaking to people. He was like a parush, separated, a hermit, totally separated from the world. And the Baal Shem Tov came to him and said, "Nu, how are you?" And he got very angry at the Baal Shem Tov for, interrupting him. "Oh, you just want to talk? I'm busy learning Torah." So the Baal Shem Tov told him, "You're a ganav. You're a ganav." He says, "What do you mean I'm a ganav?" He says, "You're stealing from the Eibishter praises." He says, "What do you mean it's stealing from the Eibishter? What are you talking about?" He says the pasuk says, "V'yata kadosh yoshev tilos Yisrael." Hashem dwells amongst the praises of Klal Yisrael. If you don't say Baruch Hashem, then you're kicking Hashem out of here. You're throwing Hashem out. It's something along those lines. I don't know if David could give me better details. He probably knows this story a little better, the details. But basically, this Tues basically says exactly that story, because the Tues over here says that if the way Tues based on Yushalmi is explaining this Gemara, it's basically saying that idea that the pasuk Va'ata Kodesh Yoshev Tilos Yisrael means that Hashem dwells amongst the praises of Klal Yisrael, and if we don't have the praises, then Hashem is not going to be here. Hashem is going to leave, and we're like kicking Hashem out. So if we are here, it's not the simple meaning of you don't exactly learn the pasuk this way, but that's the way the Baal Shem Tov learned it. And it turns out that it's not only this is the way Tues is saying it. And he even plays with another pasuk as well. In other words, changes the simple meaning of another pasuk, because the other pasuk also says, talking about David HaMelech, David is called the Ne'im Zmiros Yisrael, the pleasant singer of Klal Yisrael. How does Tues learn it over here? Or I guess maybe the Yushalmi brings this pasuk as well, but it's referring to Hashem, that he's the No'im, and he enjoys the Zmiros of Yisrael, that Hashem enjoys the praises of Klal Yisrael. It's not the simple meaning of the pasuk. But anyway, the point is, Tues says that that's what it means, that if the Yidden are here singing praises of Hashem, then Hashem will draw, the Shekhinah will be here. That the Yoshev, Kodesh Yoshev Tilos Yisrael, that Hashem dwells amongst the praises. So if we are here, if Imani Khan, meaning if I am here, the Klal Yisrael is here, Hakol Khan, everything is here. Hashem will, the Shekhinah, we have everything. Hakol Khan, everything is here. And if I'm not here, meaning if the Yidden aren't praising Hashem, then there's nothing. Then no one's here. It's not going to do anything. So we are the praises of Hashem.
The way you said it, Rabbi, is correct.
So he said something that you're stealing. Of what was the wording?
I think you're stealing Hashem's
From
food
Hashem.
because you're food, because you're nourishing, because the praises are Hashem's food.
Hashem's food. Okay. Okay. I knew there was a little detail over there. Jeffrey, yes.
So we know about Hillel. He loved to say things like this. This isn't unique. Hillel says, "Imein ani li, mi li. Uksheani latmi, ma'ani. V'im lo achshav, imasai." Right? He also says, "Negad shemor, avad shemei." He loves to say things like this that are pithy, witty, created statements, but it has to do with how you have to respect the individual as well as the group. So in order for the person to be part of the group, they have to recognize themselves as somebody worthy. Shani le'atzmi, only mo'ani. So it's the same kind of idea.
Right.
I'm if you're at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva and you're just dancing because it's fun, you're not part of the group. On the other hand, if you don't say, "I'm worthy to dance because I'm one of those who are Baal Teshuvah," or something like this, I've gone through the period of Yom Kippur, and now we're all free of sin, so we can dance in a new way. And if I'm not looking at myself as being in that category, then I can't participate. And once I do, then everybody's here.
Okay, good. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so that was one statement of Hillel, and he has a few statements over here. Then the Gemara said another statement of Hillel, that to the place that I love, he would say that that's where my feet take me, meaning that my feet take me even if I don't have in mind to come to the Beis Hamikdash. Somehow my feet automatically just bring me here, and what it seems like. What is he emphasizing with this idea that it's like it's the nature of a yid. You say the nature of that we should feel that this is our place. This is where we should be coming even without thinking. This is the automatic place for us to come. This is the Beis Hamikdash. And then he says, "Im tava yel beisi." If I come to my house, and this statement is for sure Hashem saying it. And Tues brings this down. He says it is interesting because the first statement, when he talks about myself, he's talking about Klal Yisrael, according to at least the way Yerushalmi is learning it. And now this other statement is talking about Im tava yel beisi. If you will come to my house, meaning Hashem's house, if you will come, then I will come to your house. So Hashem is speaking and saying, if I will come here, it's for sure Hashem speaking. Im tava yel beisi, if I come to your house, meaning to the Beis Hamikdash, then if you come to my house, the Beis Hamikdash, then I will come to your house and I will put my shechina there. If you don't come to my house, then I won't come to your house. As it says, if you mention my name, wherever I mention my name, I will come there and bless, which doesn't mean I mention my name, but I will allow you to mention my name, and you mention it there, I will come there, and I will come to your house and bless you. Wherever I allow you to mention my name, I will come there and bless you. And that basically is that if you come here and praise me, I will come, I will rest my shechina here. And then it mentions a final thing about Hillel, that he saw a golgoilas, that was a skull that was floating on the water. He said, because you he told the skull, because you drowned someone else, you were drowned, and those that drowned you, they will be drowned. That everything is going to be paid for. Hashem will do measure for measure, and he will punish whoever needs to be punished. That seems to be just a statement that because we're mentioning Hillel's statement, we mention another statement of his. It doesn't seem to be that connected, except for the fact that it's said by Hillel. The Gemara then mentions this other story, and I know my time is up, but I'm going to take an extra 2 minutes if that's okay. So Rabbi,
this thing with the skull, he brings down, there's a note from Midrash Shmuel.
Yeah.
He says, because you drown others, they drown you as a punishment that fits the crime. However, if you are not guilty, those that drown you will be drowned.
Hey, we did that yesterday.
Even if you're guilty, those that drown you will be drowned, no?
If you are not guilty, those that drown you will be drowned.
But what about if you are guilty?
Then if you are guilty, then as a punishment that fits the crime, you drowned others, they drowned you.
But they also had no right to do it, to take the matter in their own hand.
I'm just reading generally what it says.
Who's the source of what you're?
Midrash Shmuel.
Interesting. It's not the common understanding. That was normally you would say it doesn't matter whether the guy, and normally you'd have to say both don't seem to fit. The common understanding is he's not getting drowned unless he deserved it. So that's one issue. And then the other is whoever else drowned him, even if he did deserve it, they're gonna have to pay for what they did, because they weren't the ones who were supposed to be the ones to drown him. So again, I don't think that's the common understanding. I'm not saying that, there obviously is an understanding of that medrash, but on the simple level, it doesn't sound.
There's a fuller note. It says in Hillel, this is from Midrash Shmuel. It says in Hillel's previous statement and in this one, he's referring to the divine attribute of Midah Keneged Midah, extending it to all aspects of life. There are some who divide this statement into two independent scenarios. Because you drowned others, they drown you as a punishment that fits the crime. However, if you are not guilty, those that drown you will be drowned.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if you know what I mean? It's not the common way of hashkafa that we normally understand midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Okay, the next Gemara, and I'll just rush through it. The next Gemara that we did yesterday was that Rabbi Yochanan said the feet of a person are like guarantors that he goes. They take him to the place where he's supposed to be, and the way Hashem arranges it is a person has to be in a certain place before he passes away. His feet will take him there no matter what. And the Gemara brings a story about Shlomo HaMelech, that he had these two scribes that they were supposed to die. The Malach HaMavos came and said that he seemed sad because he implied to Shlomo HaMelech that they're supposed to die, and for whatever reason he wasn't able to kill them. It's a big discussion exactly why wasn't he able to kill them in Shlomo's eye. In other words, what did Shlomo understand? We understand that he wasn't able to kill them because they weren't in the place where they're supposed to die. They're supposed to be at the entrance to Luz. But Shlomo obviously understood something about why the Malach HaMavos, the angel of death, couldn't kill them. So he thought he has a little trick. He's going to send them to a city where the angel of death has no power. What city is that? That's the city of Luz. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about it. It's a Gemara in Saita that the city of Luz, the angel of death has no power over. And because of that, he sent them there. He sent them with Seirim, with Shlomo HaMelech. King Solomon had power over the demons, and he sent them with demons to that city, thinking that they'll be safe and they'll go to the city, and now he'll save them. He'll overturn their whatever judgment, punishment they were supposed to have. They're supposed to die. Somehow he was thinking that he's gonna override that. It didn't work. They ended up, when they reached that city, they died right away. And he saw the Malach HaMavos the next day, and he said, he saw him laughing. He says, "Why are you laughing?" He says, because you basically took them to where I needed them to be. You thought you were saving them. You actually brought them to where they were supposed to be. And Shlomo HaMelech says, the feet of a person, listen, they bring a person to wherever the person is supposed to be, no matter what. You can't override that judgment. Okay, so that's basically.
Now, the question I have on this whole Maisa is, why weren't they where they were supposed to be in the first place?
Well, it seems like they weren't. It wasn't their time to die yet. They needed another day or something. And
whatever, I'm just saying.
Their feet had to bring them there. They weren't yet there. They were supposed to be there. And the Malach HaMavos was using different means of getting them to where they're supposed to be. And in truth, it seems like they would have
including speaking to Shlomo HaMelech.
Anyway, all right. So we're going to stop here. Zay gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.